Hey, Scott Fresener here with the T-shirt report and my good friend Richard Greaves, and this is show number 14. Who'd have thought again? Every time we do a show, we go, "Wow, we're still doing these things." This is
You
gonna.
gotta stop saying that.
I
We're a big
know, I
success.
know, but you know, one day it'll be like when you get, like we're getting older. One day we'll wake up and go, "This is show 100," you know, and this is show 200. Like when you see the TV series of whatever I'm watching now, 6 Feet Under, and they've done like
Mm-hmm.
65 episodes. Well, how many did David Letterman do? 6,000? No, it must have been more than 6,000.
6028.
Which seemed like he would have done more. I don't know why. It just seemed like 30 years, maybe the math works, but I don't know. Would have thought 20,000 shows. Maybe Johnny Carson did 20,000 shows. Anyway, this is a very focused show. Our topic today is going to be about water reclamation, gray water, recycling water, kind of giving you some tips and some ideas and some thoughts. Real quick industry news. I mean, real quick, just toss away before we get into the meat of the topic is our good buddies at two regular guys, Aaron Montgomery and Terry Combs, are doing a FESPA. What do they say they're going to do? You have a note.
An industry trade show updates, which they're going to talk about FESPA in Cologne that just wrapped up, Nashville, and a preview of Indy. They're going to have people from ISS and people from NBM to actually talk about it. So those will be pep talks or whatever. But they actually got to go to FESPA, which we didn't. So I'm very interested to see what Terry and
I don't think Terry went. I don't think Terry went. Aaron went. No, I'm not even sure. I don't think Aaron exhibited because
well, I know. Yeah, I know Aaron went, so he'll have some news that we
yeah,
didn't get to see.
yeah, and we're going to do our FESPA wrap up in the next week once we get done talking to all of our. We have a lot of friends that were there between our buddy Stefan and Proctor, and just we have lots of people. So we're going to.
Mark
Yeah,
Vassalantone
so
went.
we got to pick up the phone and call some of our people and see what they saw that was new and what was interesting. And I have heard rumors that the crowds were a little low. In fact, I got pictures from Stefan. I think even Proctor sent pictures, and I was surprised. The aisles did not look very busy. Not for a typical, you've been to FESPA. Sometimes the aisles are just jammed, and there's
Right.
certain parts of the day when the aisles get a little less. So anyway, so
Well, I know
today's.
Stefan said that the Firefly was the talk of the show, so I'm real pleased to
I
hear
think
that.
think you're on
Something
base
from the
there.
States.
Yeah, I think you're on base there. All right, so today's topic is recycling gray water, and you have done your homework on that. You've been there in the tank, baby.
Well, water's always been a big part of my life because I lived in my parents' basement for many, many, many years until I moved out. And in the area where I lived in Wisconsin, a sump pump was definitely part of the basement.
Hmm.
So we lived in a floodplain. We lived in what used to be the Milwaukee River bed. And when it rained, eventually, the water would come into the sump pump and it needs to get pumped out. But every year there's a big storm where the power goes out. And of course, when the power goes out, how do you pump? And so I became an expert. Every year when something failed, I became better and better and better. So we had gas-driven, we had a Honda generator that I made my father buy, which was the save-all. But we had a gas-powered sump pump that when the electric ones would die, and there were literally 3 separate sump pumps because one year it failed. One year it just couldn't work any longer. So I've pumped for an awful lot. But when it comes to recycling water, my first experience happened in Florida when I worked for Harlequin Nature Graphics. And Michael Latona wanted a way to recycle because, believe it or not, Florida's a big desert. It's a sandy desert, and every place that we could try and recycle water, we did that. And he had a guy in the boat business that could get him a 400-gallon tank, and we built a very primitive but simple but very effective recycling gray water system in which the water we developed screens with and the water that we recycled, we sent it through a filtration system and then into a big tank and just blasted it out. I don't remember how we got rid of it, but I was a big Safety Clean customer, and I'm sure that's somehow how we got rid of the sludge. But I was reminded this week because FESPA was happening, and I'm remembering what I used to see when I went to FESPA. And I remember once in Amsterdam, Kiwo had a water filtration system that I believe they distributed all over the world, especially to the desert companies or countries, is what I meant to say. So water filtration has always been valuable, and there's so much talk about the California desert droughts and how their water is just gone. And when I lived in California, we had a water moratorium. They did not like how much water we were using, and I thought about doing it there. My friends here in Michigan are interested in putting in a water filtration or a water recycling system. So I've been thinking about it a lot. So it all changes when a couple of weeks ago I'm looking on Facebook. Forgive me. But I noticed that Brian Haynes of Middletown Inc., who is not the better half, he's the lower half or the sub half of Megan and Brian Haynes that run Middletown Inc. Megan is one of my friends from the KDI system with Greg Kitson, and she's the one that seems to go to the shows. Although I've seen Brian, I saw Brian at the Atlantic City show, but I spotted his name, and then he pointed me to a CCI video that seems more like a rock video. They're showing you all kinds of quick cuts, things that I'd really like to look at for longer, but they're driving you to the idea that when you use a dip tank, you will use less water. And that's the basic function of that. We'll have the link to that in the show notes and underneath the bottom when we do post.
CCI, to clarify, CCI is Chemical Consultants.
Yes.
For those who don't know.
And when I worked for Lawson, I was the product director there, and the Lanniston brothers created an entire plastics sink manufacturing system, and I was part of that because it happened on my watch. And we built several pieces of equipment that filter and recycle chemicals, went into the sink building business. I've always built my sinks out of marine plywood or galvanized sheet metal. I had the sheet metal man bend it up, and I've always been able to customize a little bit because when I'm building a shop, I get to do the plumbing the way I want. But what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes is not meant to be the age-all, be-all, end-all. It's meant to pique your interest, and you really need to get with a plumber or someone who understands water, and they will know, because I think this is a popular subject everywhere all the time. I'm going to give you the names of things that I want you to start Googling, and you're going to see from the pictures that I'm going to show you today just how easy it is, and it is going to save you a tremendous amount of time and cash. Time, I think, is the big thing that the people at CCI in the video that Brian Haynes pointed me to. And then there's a great chart, which, Scott, you should put that up right now. The great chart that shows how annual water usage when you're developing and reclaiming screens is gigantic, especially if you're doing a lot of screens a day. And he compares it to how much it takes to flush a toilet and things like that. Anything you can do to reduce gray water, I think, is a valuable thing. So let's start with dip tanks. This is the slide from CCI, the annual water usage. And notice over here on the side, you've got toilets. They typically flush about 2.5 gallons where I come from, but here he says 5 gallons per flush. So that's something you have to check to see whether or not you have a low flow toilet. Now, a dishwasher, a shower. Now, this is the stuff that I like. The 12 minutes in a shower uses about 30 gallons of water. And laundry takes about 40 gallons of water. So I think those are important things to think about when we recycle water. Every time we flush that toilet, if we could think of ways that we can reduce that amount of usage. You may remember that about a month ago, I was at Mind's Eye Graphics doing a 2-day seminar. And underneath what you're seeing right now is a few minutes of, not minutes, but a few seconds of the clips of the Mind's Eye Graphic crew using their dip tanks. Notice that they don't drain them a lot. That sort of bothers me. The idea that you're dripping water. If it's just water, I guess it's not that much of a problem, but you've got to be careful that there's going to be water dripping on the floor. And I would want my racks to be a little bit closer. They walk them across an alleyway where people are walking all the time. So that isn't as perfect because the guys have to walk and walk and walk. But this is the way they've got it actually set up. Water tanks. Here's a great picture of what the end goal is. I want you to get the water back into a water tank so that you can respray it. So this means you got to focus on filtering it so it doesn't ruin whatever pressure pump that you're going to use. Here's just an assortment of tanks that go from 20 or 30 gallons up to 500 gallons. This is my favorite. This is a 1,000 liter, so I'm just going to call it a 400 gallon. I call it a tote, but it's what a lot of chemicals come in. When chemical companies take them back, it's good to recycle them, but a lot of companies have these stacked outside, and you may be able to buy these for a song. I know that when I worked at Gelano, when I worked at Lawson, we used to get chemical deliveries like this, and I loved the cage-like idea. I loved shipping trade show stuff. Once I'd cut the plastic tub or the tank out of it, I loved shipping cardboard boxes. Nobody ever broke into those containers. This is what I would guess would be the easiest and quickest thing. One thing that I want you to focus on is see that drain down at the bottom? The drain is going to be your nemesis because sooner or later it will fill up with sludge. You must think all the time, how will I clean it? Here's a typical dip tank. This one's from Easy Way. That's the close-up of the Easy Way dip tank. In the trade, they call them open-top plastic tanks. Now, I know that a couple of times I made wooden ones. One, I had a man who worked for me who was a carpenter. I had him get some marine plywood. He cut it up, and we painted it with Ace hardware boat paint on the marine plywood. It should have lasted a lifetime. Now, I don't actually know how much these cost anymore. Lawson makes them. Anybody that makes plastic sinks for the trade, they all make them. You have to decide. Again, this is not the definitive thing. This is just an idea. This is supposed to pique your thoughts so that you'll get in there and actually try things out. There's the Chemical Consultants white one. Now here it is. Look at that pristine, beautiful sink. Isn't it pretty? We all know that that's the only way it looks when you first buy it. After that, where's all that sludge going, all that reclaimed and all that rinsed out stencil material? This is what it looks like if you were one of my consulting clients. This is a company in Fiji, which I love. They were terrific printers, but this is where the sink drained out to. Now, that happens to be a screen. That's a deep well kind of a screen, custom made, but it drips into two other screens. The box underneath has a screen on top of it. It looks disgusting, but I feel that these people were very self-conscious. They didn't let any of this sludge go out into a septic field or a drain field. They certainly didn't just dump it in the back. Looks bad, but this was very ecologically sound. Imagine this is what things look like without any covers on. When I was at Lawson, this is one of the things that the Landisman brothers invented. There's 3 screens. When I was in Florida, I used an accountant's desk, a metal accountant's desk that we mounted a sink on top of it. And the accountant's desk had drawers in it. And in the individual drawers, we replaced them with screens, a 200 mesh screen, a 140 mesh screen, and a 60 mesh screen. Of course, the 60 was at the top to get the most coarse materials. Here's what it looks like without the screens in place. Those of you that are crafty, you may feel that you can just build one of these yourself. Doesn't need to be as sophisticated as this. This is the older brother of this kind of sink. This has a filtration sediment section in it. It goes through the 3 filters and then drops into a tank. And when the liquid fills up the first baffle, like locks in the Panama Canal, it goes from the big opening. And I don't know if you can actually see this, but there's a white line right here. And that's because there's 4 inches of clear water on the surface. And when that first section fills up, it spills into the next section. And when that fills up, the baffles have to be a little bit lower each time. Every time clear water or supposedly cleaner water moves into the next sink, and then you can pump it out and use it. So this is a spectacular picture. Scott, you're an appreciator of Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm sure you're amazed at the skills.
You're the master. You're the master.
Microsoft Paint, baby.
Oh, no. You're one of those guys. I'm surprised. I won't tell anybody.
No, I've got Corel on other machines, but I didn't want to crack it out just to do this picture. So
Right.
Paint, it worked like a charm. So here's my fabulous diagram of how a baffled sediment system works for gravity gravity separation with sludge baffles. So dirty water comes down here. See how it's real dark? And as it moves through whatever liquid is there, it settles. The heavy parts, the particles, go to the bottom. And the liquid parts, when they finally fill up, they spill over edge into a tank that's a little bit lower, like a waterfall. So it waterfalls from the section number 1 into section number 2. More sediment comes down to the bottom. Then section 2 goes into section number 1, where it should be the cleanest water or solvent that you could use. And that's where you put a pump and you go back into your tank and recycle it. This is basically all you need. But remember, the key part is, how do I clean this out later on? It must be cleaned on a regular basis, otherwise it's a fail. I used a machine just like this that I got from Podger, or it was at Eater Manufacturing in early 1980 from Podger. So I inherited this technology right away, and understood how this sort of baffled system works. Every basement that I remember in Wisconsin, a lot of them, not every basement, that's a wrong thing. Many of them had these kind of recirculation systems in them to try and reuse wash water. My ecological friends and people that had basements, I saw this very commonly, and I knew some plumbing people. When I blow this up, you can see that the dishwasher, or not the dishwasher, the clothes washer spills into this sink, and then you can actually use that water again if you wanted to. It goes down into a pump, and these are people that had basements where they had very bad drainage. They had to get the water out of the sink or out of the basement. If you go on the internet and you Google sink drain pump system, I'll repeat that, sink drain pump system. That's where I had the best luck in my Google Images picture. You're going to get hundreds of self-contained sump-style pumps. And what you want is something that can handle a little bit of grit, not just pure water, because it's not going to be just pure water, even though you filtered it with 3 mesh screens. Here's the Lawson sink setup with their ink recirculation system. And it's got little rollers underneath that get it out. I think that's a terrific idea. And it just catches the water or the solvents from a screen cleaning sink and re-pushes them out through a filter, and you can reuse it right there in the sink. There's your friend. That faucet down at the bottom is the most critical part of being able to drain the liquids out and recycle them, of course, but also to be able to clean the sludge out. Wheels on the bottom and the faucet. Then the pump pumps things through the filter right into your storage container, and all you do then is attach your pressure washer, which does not need to be set on high all the time. All you need is water to dissolve your stencil, and high pressure is like kicking the stencil out of the mesh. I like the idea of dissolving, and so you need constant flow of water, not a blast of water. There's the wand right there. We've all got a wand like that.
All right, so you've got the water recycled, the gray water. What does the average shop do with the sludge?
Well, I was a big user of Safety Clean, and there's a huge industry of waste disposal. There's the fear factor of you're supposed to, or OSHA tells you that you're literally supposed to be in your car and follow the truck as it goes and it stops. And when you finally see where it's actually deposited, because somebody had some sort of, that's the scare tactic. But in the last 20 years, I've never heard of anybody being arrested for their disposal. Because this has been a constant problem since I started screen printing in 1979. What do you do with that plastisol sludge or any ink sludge? For a long time, because I had an oven inside the shop, I bought those metal trays at where the dollar store now, and I would put 2 inches of sludge and bake them for an hour and a half, and they'd be the gigantic hockey pucks.
The solid, yeah.
And those I would throw out. But you actually have to heat them up for a long time to do that. So the electricity was not free. The tins cost $1 or whatever it was to throw them away. We recycled them. We just peeled the rubber out. I'm sure we probably could use a cast iron or something or other. But I remember you recycling this aluminum tray over and over and over.
But what do you think the average large shop does? I mean, do they do that, or do they just dump it? I mean, I'm just curious.
It's a good question, and because I haven't been in a I will have to ask around. I'll ask my pals. And
I think it's a great question. I think a lot of shops probably,
how are you disposing of your
they
ink waste?
just, oh, well, we get rid of it. They probably toss it in the garbage can. So anyway, we were talking New Buffalo though, in our last show
Hmm.
about their closing, and in our trying to find anything on their website, you found a great little paragraph on the what they had done.
Well, I remember that John Weiss and I actually talked about this, their water recirculation system. And quoting from his website, which is impossible to find now, it seems to have literally disappeared when they were purchased by Gildan, but you can still find it on the Wayback Machine, part of the archive.org. We started with a common, off-the-shelf water filtration system that was deemed the industry standard. Now, he doesn't say what that actually was. Within 2 years, we outgrew the system. We built our own system utilizing designs and components created for the pharmaceuticals industry. Our system allows the reuse of the same 150 gallons of water for up to 2 weeks. This is one of the things that Rich
That's
Hoffman wrote
huge.
about.
That's huge, though.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
think about how many screens they must have made per day, that's a huge deal.
Rich Hoffman talks about in their rinsing system that I talked about that we saw in Nashville more than a year ago, that it only uses about 8 ounces of fresh water each. So people are thinking about it. That's one of the big selling points of what it saves. So our reclamation water does not go down the drain. Although, how bad would that be? If it's separated from sludge, how bad would it be if you trust your water? But again, something for you to discuss with your water department. Get them to come in and actually test some of your down the drain water, and then you'll know you will never get into trouble after that. I continue. Our reclamation water does not go down the drain. After use, our reclaimed water is pumped into one of our 4 500-gallon storage tanks. The water is removed by tanker truck at regular intervals by a fully certified waste management firm. So
Which could
John
be
is
could be safety clean, maybe, or
well, Safety Clean, they wanted you to reuse. They wanted to reuse their mineral spirits that
their
they were
mineral
recycling.
spirits. Yeah.
They were not interested in taking away 29 gallons of sludge and 1 gallon of liquid. They never liked that. They made me buy extras. I only fooled them a couple of times. As with all our generated waste material, our water is handled in accordance with or exceeding all state and federal regulations. So that's a green pronouncement, and it's also good practice. I love the idea. And you can,
What date was that, though? That was year two. I mean,
well, that was the year 2000. That's what I took it off of a 2000 dated website. But again, I was doing this in the early 80s.
yeah.
So I believe in it, and I never had to pay a water. Well, I guess I did at Shadow Graphics, but it's not one of the things I worried enough about, and now I worry about it all the time. I love the idea that people that recycle their rainwater. They've got the downspouts don't go just down spilling out into the yard. It goes into a recirculating system and could run your toilets.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a backwoods or a farm like
But
situation,
it
not somebody that lives in the city and wants
sh-
to replumb. But
should be done more and more, though. You would think all that water going to waste.
when I was a landscape architect, one of the big uses for the gigantic pool and fountain system in front of the Globe Union factory that I worked on was to recycle the air conditioning water that went through the entire building. So it aerated the water, it kept it clean, and it had to get filtered because it was a pool anyway. As long as you had to do that, why not have a pool? Fountains always are clogged. That's what I remember about the pool business. Fountains are always clogged.
I think that we need to pursue the topic, though, of what screeners are doing. And I'm thinking some guys might lie. Some guys might say, well, we do it like John Weiss, by the book. We've had the experts in here and they've told us. And other guys may just go, oh, I'm not too sure. Because I do believe that I think a lot of small shops, maybe I'm wrong, wipe a screen out, throw the rag in the garbage, and take it out with the garbage. I'm thinking a lot of guys probably do that. A lot of guys probably don't even
Mm-hmm.
think about that. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but maybe I'm thinking. I've been in enough small shops where I don't think it's the number one thing on their mind is making money and getting production out the door and blah blah blah. So I think we should pursue this topic a little more.
Well, I know that Marcy Kinter is runs the website part of the SGIA. for sustainability. I know Marshall Atkinson has become the poster boy for sustainability and what he's done at Visual Impressions in Milwaukee. And so I'm interested in pursuing this. So people on our Facebook page, that's probably a real good place to start. I'm interested in specifics, though, not, hey, we do it the same thing. That
Yeah,
doesn't help
yeah. No, we need to
anybody.
meet. We need to
I
meet.
want specifics.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All right. All right, been a good show. I've enjoyed that. I've learned a few things from you, and I love your drawing. You're showing me that you're really moving up in the world there. And anyway, so it's been a great show. I hope you've enjoyed talking about it. This is probably a thing you've done seminars on over the years, I'm guessing, because you had
Yep.
some good slides. And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.